Hi there, my name is Cammie and my friend Matthew had asked me to share my story with you of my recent mountain adventure, or as it turned out, my misadventure a few weeks ago. I had headed up into the Argyllshire Alp to do some running and to camp overnight on a peak called the Cobbler. On my way up, I headed up to the neighbouring peak of Ben Narnain to visual the surrounding views and to look over to the Cobbler mountain where I would be camping later in that afternoon. I carried on to Ben Narnain summit to enjoy the view south of Ben Lomond, which is Scotland's most southerly Munro. I then headed to my camping spot and I then settled down cooking dinner and listening to an audiobook for the evening. Later on I was rewarded with a beautiful sunset behind the Cobbler's main summit, and you might see in the background a photo of the sun shining through a small hole in the rock, and to reach the summit you have to crawl through this small hole in the rock, climb up the back and on to reach the true summit. I had a great sleep, in fact too good actually, because I in fact slept in and eventually woke up about 8:15. So I jumped out of the tent to have a look to see whether I was going to be rewarded with a beautiful weather phenomenon called the temperature inversion, and I wasn't disappointed. A temperature inversion happened because there was a clear sky overnight and with little wind, leaving the cold air to sink into the valleys below and then condense to form a fog, which leave the mountain tops poking their heads through this fog into what is a beautiful day above with blue skies and little to no wind. When this happened, the mountain tops are actually warmer than the valleys. To me, it's the closest thing to heaven on earth, where you feel you're in a place above the world, looking down, and it's a place of peace and tranquility. And you see the mountain tops coming through like islands out in the ocean. You can see the largest peak of Ben Lomond behind me, and to the right the smaller peaks of the Lomond Hills where I do many of my training runs. I enjoyed some breakfast with coffee from the tent, taking in the views of the mountains around me like Ben Narnain and Ben Eam and up to further north. I had arranged to be home for 12 to take my wife out for lunch, and I had about an hour's run back to get me to the car. So after about 10 minutes into the downward run, I went over my ankle, which is quite common when running on the mountain trails, and often I find that if I walk it off and then run again, the pain eases off and there's no swelling. It was quite sore, which again is common, but what wasn't common is I heard a crack and I realised that my ankle was probably fractured. Whilst I was well prepared with having the necessary survival equipment and a satellite tracker to communicate with the emergency services, I prayed immediately to God, asking Him to help me get home quickly and safely. So I started to hobble and then walked, and after a couple of minutes was able to run for about another 50 minutes down the valley back to the car. On the way down, I was able to find a section of the river that wasn't frozen and took my shoe and sock off to freeze my ankle in the water for about 5 minutes to help keep any swelling at bay. I then continued down to the car and was able to drive home safely because I had an automatic, so didn't have to use my injured leg. Once home, the ankle was still fine as I unpacked the car and headed into the house, and as soon as I took my first step into my home, only then did the full extent of the pain hit me, almost like a sickening pain. And perhaps God had a sense of humour because He answered my prayer literally by getting me home quickly and safely. So following a virtual A&E consultation and then up to the hospital for an x-ray, it confirmed that I had indeed fractured the talar dome bone in my left ankle and was given a moon boot and warned by the nurse not to run for another 4 to 6 weeks. Sadly, I was unable to take my wife out for lunch that day, but we did have a takeaway treat later that night instead, so not all was lost. I hope you have enjoyed some of the images behind me and are encouraged by the power of answered prayer. Hopefully that you have a chance to go into the hills too to enjoy this beautiful creation has to offer. Thanks.